Hi, I'm Stuart. Welcome to my YouTube channel, or if you've been here before, welcome back. In either case, thank you. In this video, I'm going to talk about reading books from 6 countries that I've never read books from before. I've seen several booktubers talk about doing a challenge where they read books from every country in the world. I looked online and saw that there's 195 recognized countries. That's way too ambitious a goal for me, regardless of how long I allow myself to do it. So I decided that 6 was a good number. I came upon this idea after viewing a recent video by Nix Reads. In this video, she's going to read 3 books from the Philippines in 2024. She's part Filipino, I believe half. So this is a way for her to see some about her heritage. After watching her video, I decided that I'm going to read 3 books in 2024 from the Philippines. Then I thought, well, why not add a few more countries? And I thought 6 was a nice number to try to achieve. Before I decided what countries besides the Philippines I was going to include in my 6 new countries to read books from in 2024, I needed to determine the countries that I've already read books from. To do this, I looked at Storygraph, and I saw the books that I read in 2022. I started in February 2022, and 2023 and 2024 so far. Before this, I have no records, so that's the only records I have to go by. And from doing so, I determined the 12 countries I've read books from so far. And these countries are the United States, the Netherlands, England, France, Canada, Russia, Japan, New Zealand, Germany, Ireland, Sweden, and Denmark. Kind of rather an anemic total, but at least this year I'll be able to get 6 more countries to add to the list. The next step is to choose the 5 additional countries that I'm going to select books from. The most obvious choice to add is Mexico. I'm kind of embarrassed that I've never read a book by a Mexican author, but that will change in this year. The second choice is South Korea. This is because I like a number of K-pop bands. Probably not the greatest reason, but it works for me. The third choice is Scotland. I have a lot of Scottish blood in me, so that makes it a good choice. Like Mexico, I'm kind of embarrassed that I have never read a book from a Scottish author. The fourth choice is a country from Africa. There are many countries to choose from. I chose Nigeria, perhaps partly because it's one of the most visible countries. The fifth choice is a country in South America. Like Africa, there's a lot of countries to choose from. I chose Colombia. One criteria I have in selecting the authors is they have to have been born in and spent a fair amount of time in their birth country. They don't have to live there all their life. They could become a naturalized citizen in the United States or another country. But I have to believe that they've spent enough time in their birth country to accurately reflect the experiences of people there. I think it would really mean that they would reach young adulthood, which is probably like late teens or early 20s. To pick the books, I just did online searches on the countries along the lines of best books from Mexico, the Philippines, etc. And that brought me up articles that people talked about the top books they suggested from those countries. I didn't look at it in incredible depth. I just picked the books that looked most interesting to me. Note that not all of these books are available at Libby and Hoopla, at least at my library. Some of them I'm going to have to buy, some I've already bought. It's probably not surprising that books that are translated from other countries aren't necessarily available at all the locations you might typically get them. But I did find every one. In one case, the book was only available on Amazon, but all were available. Before I start talking about the books, I apologize up front if I mispronounce some of their names. That may well happen. Also, I ended up selecting more than one book from each of the countries. To satisfy my criteria for the 6 countries, I only need to read one, but I want to read all the books ultimately, and I may well read them this year. First, I'm going to talk about the 2 books I selected from Filipino authors. The first is Dogeaters by Jessica Hagedorn. As you can see, I already have the book on Kindle. I'm just going to read a brief synopsis of the book. Dogeaters by Jessa Hagedorn is a good fit for those interested in exploring the complexities of Filipino culture and society, particularly in the context of colonialism, media, and transnationalism, through a vibrant and diverse cast of characters. So this book sounds like it would be interesting. Could be a difficult read at some points. A lot of these countries, there's been difficult times people have gone through, but I do look forward to reading it. From the second book I selected from the Philippines was The Last Time I Saw Mother by Arlene J. Chai. As you can see, I already have this one on Kindle also. Just going to read a short synopsis of the book. The first is a quote. My mother never writes, so when the mail arrived that day, I was not expected to find a letter from her. There was no warning. Between generations of women, there are always secrets, relationships kept hidden, past events obscured, true feelings not spoken. But sometimes the truth is so primal it must be told. Now with haunting lyricism and emotional clarity, Arlene Chai has written an exquisite novel about a family of women who break their silence. At the center of The Last Time I Saw Mother is a singular story of a woman who suddenly learns she is not who she thinks she is. So that sounds quite interesting. Next, I'm going to talk about the two books I selected for Mexico. The first is Atabentum, a novel of the Yucatan by Rosy Hugener and Carl Hugener. This book I don't have yet. I'm going to read a brief synopsis. Atabentum, a novel of Yucatan by Rosy Hugener, Carl Hugener, is a good fit for those interested in historical fiction that explores themes of social justice, friendship, and personal growth, set against the rich cultural backdrop of post-revolutionary Mexico. Another book that might have some difficult parts in, but it does sound like an interesting read. The second book from Mexico that I selected was The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. I already had this book on Nook, and I was planning to read it anyway. I have previously read The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells, and I'm going to read it again prior to reading this book. I'm just going to read a short synopsis of the book. The Daughter of Dr. Moreau by Silvia Moreno-Garcia is a good fit for readers interested in exploring the blurred lines between humanity and animal-like creatures set against the lush and mysterious backdrop of 19th century Mexico. This should be a especially interesting read because I can see how it carries on from the original book by H.G. Wells. Next, I'm going to talk about the two books I selected from South Korea. The first is The Guest by Hwang Sok-yong. I'm just going to read a brief synopsis of the book so you get an idea what it's about. The Guest by Hwang Sok-yong is a good fit for those interested in exploring the complexities of human nature and the impact of historical events on individual lives, particularly in the context of the Korean War and its aftermath. Like many of these books, it sounds like this is going to have its difficult parts, but it also sounds interesting. The second book I selected was Jiyoung, born 1982, by Nam-Joo. This is actually a book I've heard of before. Several booktubers I follow read this book. It talks about the experience of women in South Korea. Although South Korea is quite a technologically advanced country, it's kind of conservative, and I guess that can reflect in the way women are treated. And just for the record, conservative isn't a compliment for me. I don't consider it a positive. Now I'm just going to read a brief synopsis of the book so you can get an idea what it's about. Jiyoung, born 1982 by Nam-Joo, is a good fit for those interested in exploring the complexities of femininity, the struggles of women in contemporary Korea, particularly in the context of sexism, feminism, and societal expectations. This book is actually quite controversial in South Korea. I recall not too long ago, a member of the K-pop group Red Velvet, I believe Wendy, posted photos of her reading the book, and she got her face ripped off. Next, I'm going to talk about the two books I selected for Scotland. The first is Luckenbooth by Jenni Fagan, and the synopsis for the book says, Luckenbooth by Jenni Fagan is a good fit for those interested in a dark, atmospheric, and mysterious tale that explores the interconnected lives of residents in a haunted tenement building in Edinburgh, Scotland, spanning multiple decades and touching on themes of the supernatural, witchcraft, and feminism. So that, by that description, that has a lot of things I'm interested in. The second book I selected from Scotland was Duck Feet by Ellie Percy. The synopsis for this book says, Duck Feet by Ellie Percy is a good fit for those seeking a heartwarming and relatable coming-of-age story that explores the complexities of youth, friendship, and self-discovery with a touch of humor and a strong sense of place. Next, I'm going to talk about the books I selected to read from Nigeria. I ended up selecting 4 books from Nigeria, but there's a reason I'll explain as I proceed further. The first book I selected was A Coastline is an Immeasurable Thing, a Memoir Across 3 Continents by Mary Alice Daniel. The synopsis of this book says, a poetic coming-of-age memoir that probes the legacies and myths of family, race, and religion from Nigeria to England to America. Mary Alice Daniel's family moved from West Africa to England when she was a very young girl, leaving behind the vivid culture of her native land, the Nigerian savannah. They arrived to a blanched cold world of prim suburbs and unfamiliar customs. So began her family's series of travels across 3 continents in search of belongings. The second book I selected from Nigeria was The Legacy of Molly Southbourne, the Molly Southbourne Trilogy, Book 3 by Tade Thompson. When I saw this as a third book, I figured I wanted to read the first 2 books before I read the third. So I'm also going to read The Survival of Molly Southbourne, the Molly Southbourne Trilogy, Book 1 by Tade Thompson. The Murders of Molly Southbourne, the Molly Southbourne Trilogy, Book 2 by Tade Thompson. The 3 books are actually novellas, so probably combined they make up the length of about 1 book. A synopsis of the book says, every time she bleeds, a murderer is born. Experience the horror of Tade Thompson's The Murders of Molly Southbourne, a finalist for the 2017 BSFA Award, the 2017 Shirley Jackson Award. The rule is simple, don't bleed. For as long as Molly Southbourne can remember, she's been watching herself die. Whenever she bleeds, another Molly is born, identical to her in every way and intent on her destruction. This series is a little different from the others I selected because this is horror. It's going to be interesting reading horror from another country. And finally, I'm going to talk about the 2 books I selected from Colombia. The first book I selected was The Bitch by Pilar Quintana. The synopsis for this book says, The Bitch by Pilar Quintana is a good fit for those seeking a poignant and thought-provoking exploration of motherhood, love, and obsession, set against the backdrop of a harsh and unforgiving environment. The second book I selected from Colombia was The Armies by Avilio Rosero. The synopsis of this book says, The Armies by Anne McLean, who's the translator, and Avilio Rosero is a good fit for those seeking a poignant and introspective read that delves into the complexities of human relationships and the impact of violence on individuals and society. I don't have to read all these books in 2024 to make my goals. I only have to read 1 from each country, but I do plan to read all of them eventually, and hopefully I can get to all of them this year. I want to say too, I want to apologize to translators on these books. I only mentioned, I think, 1. Translation is equally as important as the source material because if the translation isn't good, you can't appreciate what the author intended. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. I plan to release videos about once a week, mostly talking about books, but occasionally talking about other aspects of my life. I hope you all have a wonderful day.